We are here, we're being pro live today, talking about marketing, some of our favorite topics here. And if you've never watched these, we're just kind of riffing and talking about stuff that we've learned, what we're seeing. I'm excited for today's topic because this is a distinction that you, Brina, discovered. Well, I don't know when you discovered it, but you shared it in a conversation maybe like a week ago. And like, I literally
Probably
wrote it on
probably
my
during that
fridge.
conversation.
Maybe, but it was really wise insight to where I had to stop and write it on the fridge on my little dry erase markers because it's so simple. Um, I guess do you wanna tell them what you discovered?
Yeah, so I can't remember how we got started on this conversation, but somehow during the course of it, I think I was talking about the personal brand because one of the goals for that Be Pro has for next year is that Paul and I both separately grow our individual brand and really get solidified in that to better support the Be Pro brand. And I was talking about like the content that I want to create and like what I want to do. And I again, the distinction probably came during that conversation, but it was the difference between being relatable versus creating content to get a reaction. And I think most people that I've seen, they write content or produce content to be relatable to their audience, which is great because that does get the likes, that gets the comments, that gets people following them. Um, but when you write content to for a reaction, yes, you might make some controversial statements,
Mhm. Oh,
you
and
might
can we clarify reaction because
oh
it means something totally different in social, and we're not talking about that. So when you say reaction, what do you
yeah.
mean?
So I'm not necessarily meaning just the likes, comments, follows, things like that. That's very superficial reactions. The reactions I'm talking about are the ones where you actually get people taking action in their day-to-day life. And that could even be something like they are so um and this is the I mean the distinction that I'm making between relation and reaction is kind of like if you're a math nerd, the whole every square is a rectangle, but not every rectangle is a square. And so, and what I mean by that with this is that you can write content that is relatable, but it might not necessarily be reactionary. And but your reactionary content is always going to be relatable.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, the reactionary kind of going back to what I was saying is that it's the stuff of where people utilize it within their everyday life, whether they're sharing. I mean, they might even just be talking about it um, with with like my boyfriend works in a physical therapy clinic, and he has conversations every single day with his patients, and it might not necessarily always be about physical therapy and like what's going on with their body. He's had personal conversations and like political conversations and social conversations, and so it's things like that of like the reactions that the content that I want to write that's reactionary is the kind that gets people utilizing it within their everyday life. I mean, and it's even content um that can sell. I mean, that's, sales copy and stuff like that is reactionary content. Like you're actually getting people to react in a certain way that they're moving down the pipeline or that they're doing what you want them to do. And so, and that's a big part of marketing that I've seen is that just that's what marketing is getting people to move from just being that kind of even a cold lead, just a lead of some sort into being a paying customer or a not even a paying customer, but just a follower of sorts. So um, I'm pretty sure I'll get this a little more fleshed out as far as like the thought around it, but that's kind of the distinction that I saw between like the relatable content and the reactionary content. Is it's again, reactionary is not necessarily just the likes, engagements, comments, shares, things like that, and it's not even inflammatory. It's not meant to incite people, or I think that's the word,
Insight. I
incite.
was thinking
Yeah,
incense, but both of them
incense.
would
Yes,
work.
I think they both work. Thanks. Um, yeah, so it's again, reactionary content is not that controversial topics. I mean, it can be. That is definitely one way to get people to take an action. I think a good reactionary content is when you have like the other day. So I don't go through the typical medical doctors for my primary care physician. I go through holistic, the kind of naturopathic care. And the other day my doctor had sent something out on, it might have been email, but I know I definitely saw it on her Instagram story. Yes, I follow my doctor on Instagram. um and it was about how there is a new federal law going into place that naturopathic medicine is going to be like, I don't know if it's dysregulated, but it's basically going to be cut down by the FDA. Like the FDA is saying that naturopathic medicine is no longer a viable source of medicine. That all these people who have gone through, and so, anyways, my doctor had posted that, hey, sign this petition. Like they're trying to take away naturopathic medicine, sign this petition. That's reactionary content because that to me it was very relatable, being a patient of a naturopathic doctor. And I was like, yeah, no, it's done so much good for me that, hey, I got to go sign this petition. And I did just that. So that's again, and here it is. I'm talking about it, and I've shared this with many, many people too. So that's reactionary content versus if it was just relatable, it'd be something like, oh, that sucks. And I might
Exactly.
share it, I might share it for somebody else to take action on, but it's not going to be something that I'm going to the lengths of advocating for it.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing. Just looking at the content is relatable, but then is it relatable? And the other part of the distinction that we haven't got to yet is that is it specific enough to get them to again be reactionary to start doing something with it? Because that's what I wrote on my fridge. I wrote um, relate equals vague, react equals specific.
Hmm.
So I was actually thinking about this the other day. How stand-up comedians they'll do a little crowd work and be like, "Hey, who here has a brother?" Right? That's
Yeah.
it's very relatable, right?
Yeah.
And then because the reaction is a laugh, now I have a joke specifically around my brother.
But that right there is still, if you think about it, it's still relatable.
Oh,
Like in that
absolutely,
specific,
it
like
is.
it's not
But
necessarily
the specific
reactionary.
is the hey, I've got a brother. That's the relatable piece. But then the specific joke about oh, my brother couldn't even tie his Velcro shoes, like that's specific and of course that's written and designed to get the reaction of a laugh in that case. um, and I don't know, that was just something that hit me the other day of the how I guess yeah with marketing and stuff it's I guess it's that masterful balance of being vague enough to where people can relate to you but still also being specific enough to get them into action whatever that action is.
Mhm.
um, and that was huge for me. um, and I'm going to be thinking about that a lot in the copywriting that we do.
Yeah, and I mean, that was something, I mean, because the whole conversation came about because we were talking about personal branding. And like personal branding, that's something is I've seen so many people that they are just relatable. But when it comes time to they actually want to be an advocate for something or they want to do something more with their brand and they try and be reactionary, it's never as, I mean, unless if you are a solid brand, it's very difficult to make that transition and to get, I mean, the story that we love to share, and Paul, I'm pretty sure you know where I'm going with this one, but the story we love to share is there was an Instagram influencer. I don't even know what she got famous for. I think it was just taking pictures of herself traveling or just herself. I have no idea. But she amassed like millions, or it was hundreds of thousands, if not millions of followers.
A lot of people.
And then she was like, well, I need to find a way to monetize this outside of just the advertising stuff. So she went to make not necessarily a clothing line, but selling t-shirts and with prints on it and stuff like that, like most of them do. And she wasn't even able to sell a single t-shirt. And like that right there is a great example of a relatable brand, but it's not necessarily something that is a reactionary brand.
Mm-hmm.
And like in her case, she might have spent 2 years amassing that kind of following or like building that kind of following. But in order to build a reactionary brand, she's probably going to have to spend another couple years producing reactionary content and like starting to make that transition. Because if there's one thing that I've learned is that people don't immediately, they wait for consistency. And so if you're not consistent with just the message that you're putting out and like what you're looking to get people to do, it's going to take a while for people to kind of, I hate to use this word because it kind of simplifies the humans in general, but you have to train people. You have to train people to know what to expect from you. And so if I make one post just saying, like right now, everything that I've posted has been relatable. I think maybe a couple times I've asked for some, reaction stuff, whether like I'm actually looking for recommendations or I'm looking for XYZ. And I want people to do something, like I want them to share my post. Well, then guess what? Like, how many shares do you think I get? Not many, because
Mm-hmm.
people aren't trained to know that I'm going to do something with that, or like they're not trained in that reactionary mindset. And so that's kind of the distinction that I'm taking into 2023 and into this next year with building my brand, is just how can I write content that is going to get people used to the idea of like any when I post something that there might be some kind of reaction I want them to take. Now, that might be a balance too of like not always, because anytime, like if I were to come to you, Paul, and every single day and I'm like every single time we talk, I'm like, hey, I need something from you.
Mm-hmm.
Like that gets pretty old pretty quick.
Yeah.
Um and so that's where it's like there has to be a trade-off. There has to be something that I'm doing for you as well. The emotional piggy bank. Actually, one of my friends, Cassidy Lujan, she introduced this concept to me because I've been going through some rough patches, and I realized that I was only calling her and contacting her when I was going through a rough patch. And so when I there was an opportunity where she really needed some help with something, and I said, "Hey," I raised my hand and I was the first one and I followed through with it. And I told her, I said, "I realized that I haven't really been there for you. Like you've been going through all this crap too, and I've never really been there for you and said, 'Hey, what can I do for you?'" And so when I found an opportunity, I told her I took it because like I want to make sure that I'm not just taking, taking, taking. And she said, "Yeah, actually I think she got it from because we all worked at Infusionsoft together, and so I think she got it from another Infusionite. But that person had told her that human relationships are like an ATM. Is if you're always going to the ATM and you're taking out from your account, well, eventually your account is going to be at a zero or possibly even a negative balance. So, in order to keep it from that, you have to put something back in. And that's how it is with human interactions. And I mean, human interactions transcend onto the social platform. Even though like the world is just I think I know I have, and I think a lot of people kind of tend to forget that when we see a profile or one of our friends' profiles liking or commenting on something, we have a tendency to forget that that's a real person on the other end,
Mm-hmm.
and that we have a tendency to forget that they have an emotional ATM, and that like it might be running pretty low. So yeah, so I mean that's where the whole thing of if you want people to continue like having comment or conversations within your comment section, well, one of the reactionary things that you need to do is, and this is content too, is comment back,
Mm-hmm.
because like that's content right there. Anything you are putting online is content. So, and that's something that I say this because that's something like I can definitely get better at, is like sometimes I'll wait 2 days or a week before I start commenting back, and then I realize at that point like the conversation's already kind of dead. That instead of like carrying on a conversation, I'll just get like a little like back, and then that just makes it relatable content rather than the reactionary content.
Mm-hmm.
So
I love it. I love again that whole relatable reactionary content, that balance between being vague and specific. Again, it has so much overlap with again, I mean, it is human reactions, but with the emotional pull in, take money in, pull it out. Uh, I also try to do the same thing on social as well, to where yeah, people comment on stuff and I'll reply to it. I also try to make sure to be engaging and commenting on my other people's stuff. Because like you said, there's a human on the other end. They just posted something, and if there's 2 cents that we can add, like let's go. Um, and it's just really interesting to think about how by doing this online and like consistently, being involved in this foam of conversation, it's it actually makes it a little easier when you do see people in person that you haven't seen in a while, like at metal shows. Um, some of those guys, maybe I'll see like once a year, but I'm seeing them all over the internet.
Hmm.
And if I see him at a show, it's like, oh hey, what's going on? Like Ruben from Scattered Guts. We love Scattered Guts. They're going to be doing Dead
Oh
of
yeah.
Winterfest again this year. I think they've done every single year they possibly could, and got to see him at the Warhead show, and I was like, hey Ruben, what's going on, man? Which we're not necessarily like super tight besties kind of thing, but it's one of those things where like we see each other online. We're interacting on each other's stuff in our friends' things. And
And that's where the argument could, I mean, it's not even an argument, but that's where, again, the example is that you've trained that interaction.
mm-hmm,
You've trained that relationship to be reactionary rather than just relatable. Because, I like, how many times have we showed up at an event and it's like, oh, hey, I've related to your content online. I like your stuff all the time. And yeah, hi, I'm Brina. Like, and
mm-hmm,
that's, it's very surface, again, very surface level conversations. Like, I can't tell you how many times that, like, I follow a bunch of partners and like I love the women in the partner group. Like, they are just some of the coolest, most down to earth, badass people you're ever gonna meet. And but that's something is like, I think Lindsay Ardmore comes to mind. uh, and I feel really bad because I do follow people very closely, and like I know a lot about their lives because I do follow them because I relate to them so much and I look up to them. And so when I meet them in person, though, because I haven't on my end, um trained that reaction, or like kind of gotten them used to, like, hey, that reaction, that back and forth, it just becomes relatable of like, oh yeah, Brita, I've seen your name pop up a couple times, and they know who I am,
mm-hmm.
but they don't know like who I am. Like, they don't know
Ooh.
who I am as, yeah, who I am as a person. They don't know, they don't see my posts, they don't interact with my posts. And I think that would be a really good sign of, like, I see influencers do this all the time. I follow a bunch of fitness influencers because I'm really big into working out and fitness. And when you start going through the comment section, like, it used to bother me just seeing, like, the women influencers, they're the best at this. They post something and then all of their other women in, like, fitness influencer friends get on there and they're like, you're doing amazing, you look so hot, yeah, way to be great. And they just say something that's just very surface level to like bump the other person up. But I've kind of realized that in being that, like, cheerleader type, like, it's still the reaction. Like, so when they meet up in person, they're already on that compliment train, and then the compliment train turns into, they're talking about different lifting techniques, or protein powders or pre-workouts that they use. And so it gets the ball rolling in that way. And but like, they've trained that reaction of like, there's a post that's made, they comment on the post, they get a response back immediately. And so that's, yeah, it's something that's a big, big lesson that, especially as somebody who's kind of introverted. And I will say that when it comes to this kind of stuff, like, it's not even about being an introvert, it's about being, I'm kind of shy to put my opinion out there. Like, it's really easy to have these one-on-one conversations and just have a conversation about things, but when it comes to actually responding to people, sometimes I'm scared of like saying the wrong thing, or and I just like overthink instead of just being like, I like taking Jada Raid's, a leaf out of her book and just, you're doing great. Like, I just
I
started,
love that.
I
I
do,
use it
it's
all
so
the
simple
time.
and powerful, and yeah. And
Oh, I was somewhere
the
the
other,
other day. That's where I was. I used the other day. It was at Einstein's, with Kaya, with my girlfriend. We were going to get bagels, and it was a young girl at the register. and she actually put in a wrong bagel sandwich, and so she had to get her manager to come and teach her how to avoid it. And she was a little embarrassed or whatnot, and it was like just real genuinely, you're doing great, and like you could feel whatever tension or stress, at least from that interaction, just kind of she didn't have to worry about it. You know, she wasn't going to get chided over, oh, you're new and you fat fingered the wrong bagel sandwich. It's like you're doing great. You're here. You're working on a Sunday morning. You clearly got something that you want to be doing, so you're doing great. One of my favorite
Yeah.
bracelets too, because I can flip it. I can flip it, normally, but then when I'm being heavy metal guy at like rehearsal, I do it
Oh, and I
backwards
got you
so that
I got the OG one and I got the new print with the "You're doing great."
I
So,
can't keep the red ones. Like I've gotten two red ones on two separate occasions, and within days, I don't know where they go. It's
yeah,
it's ridiculous.
I don't think I've taken this red one off. Yeah, I mean, like I shower with it, so it obviously gets clean. But um it's yeah, so I have one facing everybody else and then I have the one facing me. So like cuz
Mm.
Jade had actually asked me that. She's like, "Which way do you wear it? Do you wear it to where you're reading it or do you wear it to where you everybody else is reading it?" And I at that time I had the red one facing out to where everybody else was reading it. And she's like, okay, well, I'm gonna give you the updated one, the 2.0. And then she handed me that, and I was like, okay, well, then this one has to be facing me because I need the because it says it all the way around. I think it says it twice, and actually, I could tell you how many times it says it. Yeah, it says it twice. And yeah, so I realized that I need to be told double that I'm doing great, because and that's even something is like that's something that I feel that I can utilize in just this whole commenting and the reactionary kind of stuff is I'm really good at uplifting people. I'm not the best at uplifting myself, even though my love language is like the receiving love language is words of affirmation.
You're
I
doing great, Brina.
love thank you. Thank you. And that's why that is so powerful to me. And like whenever Jade and I meet, is because she is such a words her giving love language is definitely like words of affirmation. Like she is such a cheerleader and like those are the kind of people I want in my life, and she gave me some of the best advice is like whatever you want to receive you need to put out there. So even so like what I want to receive is words of affirmation. And
Hmm.
this actually does go back into like the reactionary stuff too, is because if you cuz like okay, so say that my love language was, or like my receiving love language was getting gifts, right? Well, then if I'm just going and giving everybody words of affirmation, what are they going to give me back? They're going to give me words of affirmation back.
Hmm.
But if I'm constantly sending out little gifts, I'm going to get those little gifts back. Because that's what people, they're like, she got me something, I want to reciprocate.
Oh
And
yeah, I love doing that for my buddies. I mean, I got a Christmas card from one of my good buddies, Mike Malo, the other day, and every once in a while we'll send each other stuff. Like one of his favorite bands had an inventory blowout, and I saw it in my email, and I'm like, huh, I'll spend a couple bucks, give my buddy a little surprise, and then every once in a while I'll get something. Or like our buddy Walter Griggs,
mhm.
um, broadcast guy out here. We were on a conversation, just kind of catching up, and he was talking about how he's finally going to be able to ride his. He's like that, like a really nice BMX bike, like one of the trick kind of things.
Oh, I didn't
And
know he was into that. You should connect him with Isaac Irving.
oh, does he do that too?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yeah. He's really big into that.
Okay, well that's good to know. Well, he mentioned that it's like it's 24-inch tires, and now he just kind of needs those. And so uh, Walter's done a lot for me throughout the years. So I just hopped on Amazon. I'm like, you know what? I can spend whatever. It was how much are tires and two tires in an inner tube. It was super cheap, but like again, reciprocation because he's top of mind for a lot of things, and I'm top of
But that
mind for a lot of things with him. It's
and
the
that doesn't even have to
reacting.
be yeah, and it doesn't even have to be with just friends though. It's like think about if you have a
Well, right.
community. Yeah, then I know that's, but that's a great example of hey, say you're scrolling through the comments within your community and somebody's like, "Oh man, I just missed the pre-order book drop or whatever," or like, "Hey, I went to order this book and like it was sold out." and you realize that you have a couple extra copies left. Well, hey, guess what? Like,
Yeah,
go send that person a copy. And the thing too about this though that I really want to make sure that at least that I do for myself is that I'm not just targeting people with influence.
correct.
Because that's something is I've seen to where we've worked with people before. We've been in this industry for quite a while, and we see it how you have an influential person, but the only person that they treat special is the other influential people.
Hmm.
And so it's like it creates this like very clear distinction in other people's minds of like I have to be somebody in order to be influential. Like no, that's not the case. I think one of the coolest trends that I've seen to really break that barrier has been like I'm on Instagram quite a bit. And some of my favorite people that I follow, they do the whole question thing of like, hey, ask me a question. And I had one of the fitness influencers that I follow. She does this once a week, once every 2 weeks. And there for a while, I'd asked her a couple questions, and she never really responded. But I kept going at it, and I just realized that and she finally responded to one of mine. And I say finally, but like she responded to one of mine, and I was through the roof about it. Like because it was just so cool because it made me feel seen and like it made me realize but here's the thing is when I look back on my interactions with her, I've sent her messages before and she's always responded to them. Even if it's with like a little laughing reaction or something, like she always responds to them even though she has thousands of followers. And I'm not even someone super special. I don't sit here and I don't pay for her memberships. I haven't bought her merch. I haven't bought her workout plans, but I like her posts and I follow her and I watch her stories and like she's been a huge inspiration in my fitness journey. And to see that though, like even that little thing right there made me super giddy.
Hmm.
So it's something like that of like don't neglect like don't just go after people who you think you might be able to benefit from or who
Hmm.
might be able to boost your brand. And I say you putting it out there, but this is really for me. Like that's something that I want to keep in mind is like sometimes especially when you're getting blown up with comments or and reactions and messages and things like that, it can be really easy to cherry pick and be like I only have enough emotional energy or like energy for so many people, so I'm going to go ahead and just pick the most influential. Well, no, like maybe there's somebody in there that has a really relatable story. Like share with them. Like you have no idea what it's going to do to make their day. And like I am even more of an advocate for this influencer now because she did that and because I know that she does respond to stuff and she does see stuff even though she has admitted before that she gets blown up with messages.
Hmm.
So yeah. So I mean it's again just it's about the reciprocation of like
Hmm.
if like and I'm realizing that if I want that kind of reaction from people, I need to be the one to react. And like it really stinks because there are so many people out there that I see that I'm like, man, I would love to be there to support them. But in my mind, I'm like, I only have so much energy for myself at this point.
Hmm.
Um, especially here at the end of the year. I know we talked about it a little bit, but being in business, like one of the things of being self-employed that I've come to realize is that I have to be very disciplined and realistic about why I'm either am or am not hitting my goals. And that's something is over this last year, I had a bunch of goals planned out. And now that it's the last 2 weeks of the year, I've kind of come to realize that, oh crap, like I haven't hit them. So, but that's
That's.
even something that I can share about. And that's like the relatable content that can very easily turn into reactionary.
Hmm.
Is it's vulnerable and I guarantee I have had to tell myself that there are probably plenty of other people that are slowing down this time of year with their posting because of the same situation. That it's just busy. That it's you kind of have to get real with yourself about where you're at going into the new year. And
Hmm.
yeah, but again, it's all of it can be content. It's just like really how vulnerable do you want to be? Um,
Ah,
and for
man,
me,
that's
yeah.
great. I mean, I find that the most vulnerable the more vulnerable the content, the more people relate to it, and it usually becomes and usually ends up being reactionary in a way. I talk about my mental health journeys and just being real open about like, listen, this is what I was dealing with or what happened, like, and just people dig it. They react to it, and by sharing that vulnerability, that's even gotten me, just by being an advocate and talking about mental wellness, I've been able to be a guest on a handful of podcasts specifically talking about borderline personality disorder. So, uh, yeah, I guess to because we're a half hour, if you can believe it. To everybody that's
What?
still watching and kicking ass, thank you. Um, I guess to sum it up, because you were talking about training people, right? And so I
Hmm.
think that was one of the ideas, even with just being pro live, is that we want to train people
Which, real
to
quick,
see us regularly.
I wish we could find a better word for than train, because train just sounds very
Scientific.
dimi- diminishing a little bit. Like, to be honest, in this context, it sounds a little diminishing. But
To condition
so
them.
if anybody else can think of a better word than train,
What if we
I
choo
am.
choo train them for fun? But yeah,
No,
so
no.
conditioning people, and then that is the whole. If it's vague, it's going to be easier to relate to, and if it's more specific, it's got a more likelihood of being reactionary. And we've talked about a bunch of examples of that, a lot of social ones, but I mean, just having this distinction in your head, go look around and see how you notice this. Where are they being vague intentionally? Where are they being specific intentionally? And what might be the thing they're trying to get out of their target?
I would love to see some other examples from other people too,
Ooh,
about like if there's
yes.
anything that you notice that, hey, maybe you just saw it in passing and you're like, I'll throw a like their way. Saw it in passing and decided to comment. What was it about that got you to like or comment? And then versus like, what's the stuff that really hit you? Like, was there um, a share of some sort that got you to take action in a certain way? Like, maybe you saw a post and you're like, I got to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
you went and signed up for, like there's a bunch of like winter wonderland stuff with like the cool Christmas lights and things like that. And like you saw it and were like, oh, I got to go buy tickets. Like I would actually like to see some people who sit down and kind of analyze that a little bit. And I'd love to know, what was it and where you saw the distinction for yourself between the relatable and then the reactionary.
I think I can have a perfect example to close it out. Huge fan of the band Him, and Villavalo, their singer. They broke up a couple years ago, and for most people, that's the last time we're ever going to get to see him. Well, Villavalo's doing a new solo album, and he's got a tour coming, and I saw that on the internet the other day, and so it was relatable because I mean, love the artist, but it was reactionary because it's like, oh no, it's coming to the Van Buren in Phoenix, and so I'm gonna go get some tickets for this because yeah, it's great. So that's a good example to close on. And yeah, for those watching, thank you again, and make sure you share some examples if you got anything cool out of this, or just let us know what you thought between the whole relate reaction vague specific distinction. And then I guess until next time, this is being pro live.
Woo woo.